As an actor, a musician, and an avid TV and movie watcher, I grew really tired of reading scripts and watching shows where the women were either the love interest, the mom, or dead. So my partner and I, we teamed up to write a TV pilot and eventually a short film that put two ballsy creative women front and center. And no, they're neither anyone's girlfriends or murder victims. Hi, I'm Camille Liptak, and as mentioned, I'm an actor, I'm a writer, I'm an author, I'm a musician, and I'm the co-writer, co-director of Queens of Noise. It's a dark comedy drama about two broke musicians, several bad decisions, and one small-time unhinged crook. When broke bandmates Chloe and Lizzy stumble upon a duffel bag of dirty cash, they use it to go all in on their long-delayed dream tour, but not before getting held hostage by the bag's unhinged owner, Darick, a small-time crook who will do just about anything to get his money back. Basically, it's what happens when two women finally decide to bet on themselves and the universe tries to keep them from doing so. And as a female musician, female actor, female director, I can speak firsthand to why this story had to be told in the way we told it. I've lost count of how many audition sites I've read of projects that feature women in the cast, not the lead, but they have the women, and the women's entire role is to either worry about the man, seduce the man, or get killed by the man so the man has something to avenge. And it's either that or it's like commercials that say, "Mom, 35, pretty, but not in a hard way." It's like, what? How do I be pretty but in an easy way? Like, how do I be pretty in a hard way? None of this makes sense, right? It's all very much about these stereotypical roles that are assigned to women. The focus is always on the woman's looks and on her relationship to the men in her orbit. What you almost never get to see is a woman being funny or women being funny. You never get to see two female leads who are funny and weird and edgy and nerdy and passionate and creative. You never get to see them working in tandem with one another. You never get to see them be, each other's ride or die, where they are complete disasters, but they're disasters right alongside each other. And as someone who is all of those things, I'm passionate, I'm creative, I'm weird, I'm nerdy, I'm also a complete disaster. It's really frustrating to see, to watch TV shows or to read books or to read, scripts where none of these roles that I know myself to be are there for me as a woman to play. They always are there for men. And that's especially true when you look at any type of project that involves music, right? I speak firsthand in my experience as being a female musician to this point. The experiences that I had when I was a musician, I was like 18, 19, 20 years old, and I was looking for bands to join on Craigslist, right? And, truth be told, that's a terrible idea for anybody to do, let alone an 18-year-old young woman. You will not find your musical soulmate on the Craigslist music community, okay? That I just gave up on searching for a fellow bandmate. And somewhere in all of that frustration, in the auditions, in the Craigslist horror stories, in the waiting for someone to write a story that really resonated with me, a spark started. And it really was that yearning for a musical soulmate that I think helped plant that seed for a TV show, like an idea for a TV show that had two women in a band. Because at the time, I was a young female musician. I was looking for my counterpart. It's that, and it's the would-be band that I started with my cousin when, we were teenagers and I played the drums. It's that, and it's my obsession with bands like Red Hot Chili Peppers, or at the time, my cousin and I really liked Flight of the Conchords. So it was these groups that maybe they were duos or maybe they were, a band of brothers, right? You seldom have any sort of project that is a band of sisters. We have them in shows about witches, or we have them in shows about wrestlers like Glow, but not in the musical realm. And so after years of saying that I would write this story, after countless Pinterest boards, after countless half scripts, after writing, well, almost writing, a play for myself and my friend at the time to act in, like a 2-woman play, in 2021, I finally put fingers to the keyboard and I wrote sort of like a flash fiction story about 2 musicians who got lost on their way to a dive bar gig. These 2 musicians were named Roxy and Lizzy, and it was just kind of this, witty, somewhat fast-paced, mostly them being complete disasters and not pitting themselves against one another in the story. And after I wrote that story, I then took a screenwriting class and I wrote a 3-page script featuring Roxy and Lizzy. But the idea for Queens of Noise, the idea of this world and the characters of Chloe and Lizzy, didn't actually come together until Jeff and I started working on it. I want to talk about some of the things that inspired Queens of Noise. So I mentioned, Red Hot Chili Peppers. I mentioned Flight of the Conchords. Flight of the Conchords was a big inspiration for me because they are also a 2-person band. It's a guitarist, it's a bassist. They think they're a lot better than what they are. But that show doesn't have a lot of high stakes. Flash forward to like 2018, I think, when The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel came out. I loved that show. I loved the comedy. I loved the dynamic between Susie and Midge. And there's one particular episode where they go on tour. You get to see these 2 kind of, bicker at each other. And I remember watching that episode going, wow, now that is what I should do for this female music show that I'm thinking of. Like, why hasn't anybody shown a show that features women on tour, right? Every time we see music shows starring women, it's like Daisy Jones and the Six, where there's got to be a love triangle, or the female is the lead singer. She's never like one of the musicians, or if she is one of the musicians, it's like, oh, well, she's in a love tryst with somebody, right? There's always some kind of relationship angle. And what I love about Marvelous Mrs. Maisel is the relationship, the friendship between Midge and Susie. And speaking of friendship, another big inspiration for me, Bill and Ted from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, and Wayne's World. So Wayne and Garth. I grew up watching these movies where it was these 2, like for Bill and Ted, these 2 delusional bandmates who are like, yeah, we're wild stallions. They are friends and they love playing music together and they go on these adventures together and they're like getting into trouble and getting out of trouble together. And then with Wayne's World, it's very comedy driven and they're nerds about music. They love to talk about music. They aren't so much musicians themselves as they are just fans. That's another really big source of inspiration. And I think the last one for me is Jem and the Holograms. Jem is the lead singer, but the Holograms are a band of female musicians. It's sort of hearkening back to Josie and the Pussycats, where it's like this unapologetic fantasy of women rocking out. And so I loved that idea of women in a band getting into hijinks, again, very much like Josie and the Pussycats, and then having to find their way out of trouble and being friends and going on the road. And so those are really the top 3 sources of inspiration for me. I'm sure my co-writing partner, Jeff, has different influences. Like I said, it wasn't until we sort of melded our brains together for this project that it became Queens of Noise. So he brought up Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, inserting that crime element that my nebulous sort of, it's just a band getting into hijinks and making jokes all the time didn't really have. It didn't have as high stakes as those 2 shows. And then we also were big fans of The Big Lebowski, and we watched Poker Face, season 1, the other season is not so good, and Thelma and Louise, and those became additional really big reference or sources of inspiration for Queens of Noise, the short film. So it was all of that. It was my Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, Jem and the Holograms, Bill and Ted, meeting up with Jeff's Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, Big Lebowski, and us saying, we worked on this world for so long. We worked on these characters. We spent so long, so many hours talking about Queens of Noise. I don't remember how we came up with the name. We just kind of did, and we were like, that's got to be their band name, that's got to be their name. But we fleshed out more of the world. We fleshed out more of Chloe, more of Lizzy, what made them separate, what made them unique, what made them fun, what made this world more interesting. And we did that just by watching a bunch of TV shows and going, oh yeah, so that, what if it had that? Oh, it took that. You know, we just watched everything and read a lot of things. And it was actually our dissatisfaction with how those test shoots turned out, paired with a really deep desire to see this world play out on screen, because up to that point the test shoots just hadn't hit the mark. We hadn't got the characters landed, we hadn't really built the world as well as we wanted to and knew we were capable of. And it was all that compelled us to write a 50-page television pilot script for Queens of Noise, because our ultimate goal was, we really want this to be a TV show. We weren't really interested in it being a feature film. We're like, oh gosh, we would love to see this on TV. And we were watching shows like Penguin and Poker Face, and we thought more and more about, like, you know, incorporating crime into it and humor and dark comedy. And then we, you know, adapted that 50-page pilot script into a short film script. So in August 2025, we made the official Queens of Noise short film. Proof of concept for our world, the characters, the writing, the humor, the plot, all of it. And I say, like, we made a short film as though it's like the easiest thing ever. Hardly. Making a short film is incredibly difficult. Making your first short film is incredibly difficult. It's terrifying. Directing your first short film when all you've ever directed in your life was really just Barbie movies in your bedroom, it's even more terrifying. It's a Herculean task. It is so challenging and so difficult. Luckily, Jeff came fully armed with the technical chops, the directing expertise, the expertise of leading a set, the crew, and the patience, so that we could come together and finally take this, you know, vision that we could always kind of feel and that we were always talking about, but hadn't ever articulated onto the screen, real. We finally were able to make it real. And Queens of Noise is so us. It's fun, it's funny, it's weird, it's wacky. There's a lot of cussing. And it's not about what Chloe and Lizzy look like. They are not the love interests. They are not the dead girlfriends. They are two broke bandmates, and it's about their friendship. And it's about their passion for this creative act of playing music. And the fact that both of those things drive them to make terrible decisions. And, you know, it's like, because they always have each other's back, and somehow they're going to find a way out of the trouble that they get into, I hope. You know, the bottom line, if there is one, is that I spent a long time waiting for someone to write a story that I wanted to see. I spent a long time waiting for someone to write roles for women that I wanted to play. And at some point, just however it happened, I just accepted that that person had to be me and Jeff. So here we are. If you've made it this far, congratulations. You are now legally bound to follow along forever. So hit the subscribe button, hit the share button, hit the like button, and come back for the next one. And if you have any questions, thoughts, hopefully not complaints, or your own horror stories about terrible Craigslist music ads or, you know, acting auditions gone bad, drop them in the comments and let's get this conversation going. Also, be sure to follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook at Queens of Noise Film. And if you are wanting to get your hands on the Queens of Noise zine, is it showing on the screen? It's showing on the screen. You can become a paid subscriber to our Substack, queensofnoise.substack.com, and we'll send you a digital copy. So that's it for now. Bye for now. Thanks for watching.